All right. Today you are going to be taking notes on the United States and industrialization. Um, the essential questions for this section are: did rapid industrialization improve the lives of Americans, and are the benefits of progress worth the cost? Your state standards, you are to analyze how the rise of corporations, industry, and technological advancements transformed the American economy from more of a farming-based one to an industrial economy. And you were going to explain the social and economic effects of industrialization. So how did industrialization change the way people lived their everyday lives, and how did it affect how much money was coming in? And also the growth of labor unions post-Reconstruction. Your vocab for this section is gross national product, which is the total value of all goods and services that a country produces during a year. Laissez-faire economics, which is basically the belief that the government should leave their hands out of the economy and that it will regulate itself and do what it needs to do. And an entrepreneur are people who risk their capital to organize and run a business. So these are people who spend their money to start businesses. Okay? I will go over those other vocab words as we go through the chapter, but those are the three that you need to focus on for today. So we will start the section, the rise of American industry. All right. So basically, the Industrial Revolution has been happening in Europe for a while now. But in the early 1800s, it reaches the United States. Civil War breaks out in the 1880s. But after the war comes to an end, industrialization basically expands far more rapidly. Millions of people left the rural areas, the farming towns, to move closer to more suburban-like towns and cities to work in mines or factories. The biggest boom happened in the 1890s after after the United States, I should say, was electrified. With the spread of electricity, allowed for factories to be built in more places. And just a very big spread of technology very quickly with electrification. And by the end of the 1800s, the United States is the world's leading industrial power. So we are the industrial production powerhouse of the world by the end of the 1800s. A lot of this advancement is due to the amount of natural resources that we have. They range from everything from minerals to coal to oil at the time. The big ones include timber, coal, iron, copper. Gold is a big one as well. These resources are inexpensive because we are producing them out of our own soil, so we don't have to pay any taxes. There's no middleman. The resources come from our country, and they're fairly inexpensive. Most of these resources are located into what at the time is the West. So we are done. We are done with Ohio as the West. We are pushing forward to the actual West by the 1800s. By the end of the 1800s, I should say. And so settling the West, with electrifying the West, more people were moving to the West. And with more people moving to the West, these resources were more easily accessed. And to transport them, we have the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, which, as it implies, goes from the East Coast to the West Coast through railway lines to move natural resources and finished products back and forth. As I said, there is a wealth of natural resources: timber, coal, iron, copper, silver, gold. Basically, at the time, America was a completely self-sufficient economy. Didn't need much outside help. We also found petroleum in Pennsylvania, they turned the petroleum into kerosene, which they now use it to um, fuel oil lamps and stoves. Before this, it had been mostly wood or whale fat. By 1900, there were oil fields drilled for petroleum all the way from Pennsylvania to Texas, and oil production led to a massive economic expansion in the early 1900s. That is a distribution of natural resources throughout the states. Purple is coal, orange is copper, red is iron. The darker pink is limestone, and the lighter pink, which is not really very easy to see, that one is kind of in between the purples by Pennsylvania. And then you have green is timber and yellow is other. And then here is mineral production up to 1900. As you can see, going into 1900, coal was the most important resource for our nation. We also have the boost to industrialization provided not only by the technologies but of the human factor of it. There was a second wave of immigration into the United States at this point. This is where you have a big wave of like your German immigrants, your Irish immigrants moving into the United States. From 1860 to 1910, so in about 50 years, the population of the United States tripled. That is a huge influx of people. Not all of them were immigration. Some of them were just the fact that medical technology allowed for people to live longer. So you now have an older workforce as well. And between 1870 and 1910, more than 17 million immigrants arrived in the United States. So that is a 40-year period, and 17 million people were moved into the United States. And this is a chart of the pace of immigration. So you see its peak there at 1900 with close to 900,000 immigrants. Or 9,000, my bad. 9,000 immigrants in about 1900, probably about around 1905, or no, 1900. You have a large number of immigrants coming into the United States. This is a chart for the number of manufacturing jobs in the United States. So you can see there are about 1 million of them in 1850, and then 50 years later there are 5 million. So that is a huge change in the type of work that is being done by the people in the United States. Again, before this we were mostly agrarian, a lot of farmers, but now we are building factory after factory and producing more and more of our own goods. We also have a large, with the Second Industrial Revolution, you have a large slew of new inventions that made it easier to transport goods, communicate with each other, and sometimes in the case of things like the telephone, created a completely different and new industry. So Cyrus Field laid a telegraph cable across the Atlantic in 1866. So now there's a telegraph cable that goes between the United States and Great Britain. It's very quick and easy to communicate, a lot more so than it was before the telegraph cable. Thaddeus Lowe invented the ice machine, which is the basis for the refrigerator, and Josephine developed the automatic dishwasher. So the automatic dishwasher is something that is kind of older than you'd think. These are different inventions and inventors of that area or era. You've got Henry Bessemer with the Bessemer steel process. That's going to come into play with the rise of bigger industries. Steel is going to be one of the biggest ones in the United States. Elisha Otis invented the elevator, so thank you, Mr. Otis. You still see Otis in most elevators today. Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. Thomas Edison invented the phonograph, which is the precursor to record players and then CD players. Then you have AC current, which would be Nikola Tesla. Charles and Frank Drake invented the motor car, a practical motor car. And then you have 1903 with the Wright brothers having their first airplane flight. Here are some more that came kind of before that. You've got the steam engine, the cotton gin, the steamboat, the sewing machine, and the telegraph again. They are these ones are probably the better known inventions of the time. The steam engine obviously revolutionizes transportation. The cotton gin impacts the South on a large scale. That one is a little older, as you know. It was pre-Civil War invention. The steamboat pushes forward. Sewing machine just kind of makes stuff easier. And telegraph, again, communication is key when expanding west. Again, some of the same people on that one. And then we have free enterprise. Laissez-faire economics, which from your vocab, basically is the hand of the market. It will do what it's going to do. It doesn't need anyone to regulate it. It relies on supply and demand to regulate prices and wages. So if there is a high demand for a product or a high demand for a job, then the prices are going to go up. Or if there's a lot of competition for the job, generally wages go down because you have more and more people that are willing to work for less money. The competition of these different companies trying to figure out what to supply promotes efficiency for the economy. They advocate for low taxes for companies, limited government debt. They wanted a government-built transportation network to support economic growth, which is interesting considering that they don't think the government should be involved or be taxing them. Northerners supported high tariffs and government subsidies. Subsidies are basically the government just finances it for you. Southerners wanted low tariffs, though, to promote trade, but everybody likes a government subsidy for their business. It's going to cost them less money, but you more. The free enterprise system of laissez-faire economics, the Civil War basically saw a rise in taxes because that is a lot of damage to fix. There's not really a losing side that you can take money from when the losing side is also part of your own country. So that was difficult. So the U.S. raising tariffs caused other countries to raise their tariffs on us. So now we have to pay more. As tariffs were gradually lowered, U.S. companies grew larger and larger. And then if you look at the graphic, this is basically the 6 principles of laissez-faire economics. This is something that if I were you, I would make sure I knew for a later date. I would definitely put this chart in my notes. That is the end of industrialization. We will talk more about the railroads and the other aspects of industrialization later this week.